So it was the time of 2023 Cricket World Cup, and I was curiously searching for some articles on the Cricket World Cup, just for the sake of trivia or just for the sake of some interesting facts, when I stumbled upon this article on Al Jazeera, a network that is owned by the government of Qatar, a fact that I got to know only while, researching for this video. It was actually the headline of the article that compelled me to click on it, right? And I did expected some form of criticism for our Prime Minister because a particular stadium's name is based on the current serving Prime Minister of India, that is Narendra Modi, right? So I did expect some criticism. But what came in the article, what I saw in the article was appalling, to say the least. Now let me share a few snips from it. And as a background, I'm not a hardcore fan of the ruling government in India, right? They do have some flaws and I'm open to some criticism. And that was the reason why I was curious about this article, right? But again, I'm sharing some snips that will make it clear what I really saw. Look at this, the article, the BJP's World Cup, India's Modi wields cricket as a political weapon, right? That's fine. I mean, this headline is fine. And just below you will see, from political influence to the naming and choice of stadium and the demonization of Pakistan and Muslims, some say the BJP is using tournament as a launch pad for a third term in office. Now, for the uninitiated, BJP is the name of the party of the ruling government that is there in India that was selected by a democratic process of voting, right? So if you see, it's one thing criticizing the administration for naming the stadium on the name of the current serving Prime Minister, right? But it is one thing to link the demonization of Muslims, right, in this article. And mind you, this is complete bullshit. It's just not the fact, right? If you're here, you'll know that it's just a complete bullshit and it's just a fake narrative that is being spread out by some. So what Al Jazeera has done is that it has linked the fake narrative of demonization of Muslim to this article, which could have been a genuine criticism of the administration to name the stadium. And it has done it very smartly. Now let me share some more snips from it and it will be clear what I'm talking about. See this snip, right? Again, the word demonization of Muslims is used. Now this snip, wherein some author and senior cricketer is saying that this thing, the BJP government has a political dimension by getting Pakistan to play in the capital of the state, which is the BJP's Hindutva laboratory. Wow, what is this? Then again, a completely unrelated piece is inserted in this article. That is when there were some riots in Gujarat in 2002, right? He was alleged of something, and mind you, the Supreme Court of India acquitted him from all the charges. So he was declared that he was not guilty of any of the charges by the Supreme Court of India, right? But that is not mentioned. Only it is mentioned that he was accused in the 2002 Gujarat riots. Right? If you take a step back, it has no relation to the topic of this article. Now look at this again. Under Modi, Indian Muslims have been increasingly demonized and discriminated against. What? Right? So, this article was full of venom, right? And these are some examples from just one article, and it won't take you very long to find other articles of this category wherein they are literally just spitting venom. Now all this made me question, number one, who is Al Jazeera? What is the history of Al Jazeera? Number two, why are they doing this, right? And what all other dark games they've played? Is India the only target, or they have targeted other countries as well in the spreading of this fake propaganda? Next, I was curious as to how do they do this? What is their modus operandi? How are they able to create and propagate this fake propaganda? And then I want to see that since it is sponsored by the government of Qatar, which is a non-democratic authoritarian regime, is it critical of the government of Qatar as well, or is it purely hypocritical, right? So my aim in this video is to explore all these topics. So let's begin.
London.
After 85 years broadcasting to the Arab world, a last goodbye from the BBC's Arabic radio service.
So recently, BBC closed down its radio services in the Arabic language. Similarly, in 1966, it had to close down its television network in the Arabic language. That is the BBC Arabic Language Television Channel. Now, due to this, at least 1,000 journalists and other staff were about to lose their job. This is where the House of Al Thani, that is the monarch, the dictator, the king of Qatar, came into picture, and he hired all these journalists to create what is now known as Al Jazeera. But back then, when it was incorporated, nobody had heard of this channel. Nobody had heard of this name Al Jazeera. However, its destiny was about to take a dramatic turn. things were about to change for Al Jazeera. Taliban bombed the Twin Towers and USA consequently launched a counter-offensive on Afghanistan, right? And at that time, there was Taliban that was ruling Afghanistan. When it was all happening, the only news channel to have a station in Kabul was, guess who? It was only Al Jazeera. So that's where its fortune took a turn for the positive. So when Americans were dropping bombs in Afghanistan and Northern Alliance was gaining traction in the war against Taliban and Al-Qaeda, and later on when the American forces were deployed in Afghanistan, guess who was the only channel that reported and showed the visuals to the globe? It was Al Jazeera. Now let's take a pause and ask ourselves a question. How can a news channel have a media outlet in a country that is ruled by a regime that hated freedom of press? Now the answer to this question is pretty simple, and it is still evident if even today you take out the reporting on Taliban. Al Jazeera reported on Taliban and never for once named them as terrorists. It always named them as fighters, rebels, but never terrorists. So it got them some goodwill in the eyes of Taliban. So this is what got Al Jazeera a lot of traction. This is what allowed Al Jazeera to stay in Afghanistan and report. So Al Jazeera was playing on two sides. On one side, it was the only channel that showed the entire world the visuals of the Afghanistan war. Second, in the Arab world, since they were not demonizing Taliban as terrorists and they were merely labeling them as fighters or rebels, they gained a lot of traction in the Arab world. So it was a time wherein they gained a lot of prominence in the Western world and in the Arab world combined together. Now, this kind of reporting did not go unnoticed in the eyes of Terrorism Incorporated as well. And soon enough, you will find that exclusive interviews, exclusive tapes, exclusive messages by Al-Qaeda, Osama bin Laden and Al-Zawahiri were exclusively delivered to the offices of Al Jazeera. Now, after gaining so much traction, so much name, so much credibility, Al Jazeera wasted no time in opening its English language channel, and that's when things changed for it. So this was broadly the history of Al Jazeera. Now we'll have a look at some of the dark games that are played by Al Jazeera, right? Is India its only target, or it has targeted other countries as well? To start with, let me make it clear that it had a prominent role in toppling of few dictatorships in the Middle East. It was the Arab Spring of 2011, and it was not only the protesters that toppled the dictatorships. It was also Al Jazeera and its colored reporting tactics that led to the fall of these dictatorships. Journalism, colored by Al Jazeera's virulent perspective, also aided in the downfall. It was easy for Al Jazeera's reporters to access the troubled Arab nations and report from there, since they could speak their language and they looked like the locals, and hence they became the only medium via which the world would view events from those countries, colored again by whatever Al Jazeera wanted to portray. The result? The entire NATO intervention in Libya and later Syria was based on reports and videos of repression broadcasted by Al Jazeera. Right? This was the size, this was the scale of its influence on the West. They attacked the country, right? They attacked the country just based on reports from Al Jazeera. And even later, there were some reports of chemical attacks in Syria, again reported by Al Jazeera. The result was that without even asking who fired what and without even bothering to investigate, the US struck Assad's government with airstrikes and Tomahawk missiles. Now, as time passed, Al Jazeera found itself on a very sweet spot. They were super influential in the Arab world, right, because they were reporting in their language. Number two, they gained a lot of credibility in the West, Israel and India, because they played bravely to topple the authoritarian tyranny of dictatorships. Now, once Al Jazeera realized that they changed their reporting style, now they were reinforcing the stereotypes of white nationalism in West, rising Zionism in Israel, and Hindu nationalism in India. So first they targeted the Arab nations. First they destabilized the Arab countries, and then they are now targeting the West, Israel and India. Now let's take a look at this clip from a report by Al Jazeera on yoga.
This whole conversation on appropriation and authenticity takes an uncomfortable turn when we look at how yoga has been weaponized in India under the leadership of Narendra Modi and the Hindu nationalist BJP party. They've been trying to reclaim yoga as a Hindu tradition, as a way to assert Hindu identity in a multi-religious country where Muslims have come under violent threat.
In the end, you can see that an innocent-looking article and an innocent-looking video on yoga is in the end colored by anti-India, anti-Hindu tones, right? And trust me, it is nothing like that. Yoga as a practice is practiced by everyone irrespective of their religion, and it has never been used in India as a way to propagate Hindu nationalism. I mean, whatever was said was just a piece of crap. Now, I, as an Indian, know this is crap, and if I see this, most probably I'll ignore it. But if you're from the West, Israel, or the Arab world, you are not going to ignore it. You're going to believe it because, hey, it's reported by Al Jazeera. And this now brings me to the modus operandi of Al Jazeera as to how it spreads hatred across the globe. First thing I notice is that they will pick up a slightly controversial topic. Now, let me take that article which I showed you in the beginning, which was about politicization of World Cup, right? And honestly, if I read this heading, it is partially true. I mean, I was also taken aback that how can a stadium be named after a current serving prime minister? It's too much of narcissism, to be honest, right? So this piece of criticism was fair, and they've picked that up. So they picked up a slightly controversial topic. But later, it won't take you too long to recognize other unrelated elements that basically spur venom in the name of journalism are incorporated in the article. For example, politicizing World Cup is something, but demonizing Muslims, right? Playing ground of Hindutva, right? I think this kind of labeling is bullshit, right? So what they do is they will pick up a slightly controversial topic, and then they would insert their own bits, right, into it that are not related to the main topic. Just like they inserted the piece on Gujarat riots into the politicization of the World Cup article. I think it was just unrelated. So what they are doing it is they are taking benefit of something controversial. They are writing about something controversial, and then they are inserting other unrelated things so that it kind of gain tractions in the person's mind. The reason why I'm highlighting this is that this is their way of coloring journalism. They will pick a topic that can be debatable to say the least, and then in between the lines, they will put venom in the form of unrelated accusations and generic statements that can elicit very strong emotions in the reader's mind. So this is their first way of modus operandi. What is their second way of modus operandi or their mode of operations? Now, if I look at this article as an Indian, I can clearly say that the statement made in the yoga video and this article is complete bullshit. However, if I'm a Westerner, an Arab, or an Israelite, I have no way of separating the hidden propaganda from the actual facts. And I, as an Arab, a Westerner, or an Israelite, might as well believe whatever they are writing, right? Hence, I might believe as an Indian that the rise of Zionism in Israel is real, and the white supremacy in the West, the racism in the West is so real. Just like the Westerners and Israelis and Arabs will believe this piece of shit that I just showed you. It didn't have to matter if it were true, right? It doesn't matter if anything at all is true. All that matters was that a perspective is being portrayed through the lens of the all-powerful Al Jazeera, the slayer of dictatorships and the fighter for the truth regarding rising Islamophobia. So their second way to operate is to create news items that may not impact me since I am a resident in this country, and I'll clearly say that what they're writing is complete bullshit, but they impact people of other countries who read these articles and who get influenced by these articles. So this is their second modus operandi, their second mode of operation to fulfill the hidden agenda for the government of Qatar. Now let's take a look at their third way of perpetuating hatred and misinformation. See, the article that I showed you, if it was written by an Arab or a Westerner, might be very easy to discuss it, that hey, they are being prejudiced, they are biased, right? They don't know what the reality is. But what Al Jazeera does very smartly is that it picks up authors from the local country to write these articles. So if there's an article or a piece of content that spurs hate on India, most probably an Indian would have written it. Right? Now, since an Indian is accusing India or the government of India on certain things, it gains a lot of legitimacy in the eyes of the reader. That, hey, it cannot be biased. An Indian is accusing India. An Indian is saying that there's demonization of Muslims in India. So this is their third way of modus operandi, and they are very smart at it. Right? I'll tell you some more examples. Let's take a look at this article wherein a democratic selected government in India is compared to a fascist regime, right? And to lend legitimacy to this article, it's written by none other than Arundhati Roy, a very prominent name in India, right? Since it is written by an Indian, and in this case, prominent Indian, of course it will gain traction in other parts of the world compared to India, since it is gaining legitimacy by the presence of a prominent Indian name. Now, let me take examples of of how this is used to demonize other countries. This video on Israel is made by an American Jew and it spurs venom on Israel, right? Now, since it is made by an American Jew and not by an Arab or a Westerner, of course it will gain more legitimacy, right? So in this case, a Jew is being used to spur venom on Israel. Let's take another example. A white person is used to propagate the agenda of rising white supremacy and racism in USA. And it is made by none other than a white US national. Okay. So had it been made by an Arab, had it been made by an Indian, had it been made by anybody else, it might not look very legitimate. Now, since a white person is talking about white supremacy and racism in USA, it gains legitimacy. I, as an Indian, if I'm seeing this, I may believe it to be true. Right? Similarly, the videos on Jews, on Israel, I, as an Indian, may believe it to be true because a Jew is speaking about this. Right? Similarly, in the case of Western white supremacy, a white person is speaking about this. So this is their third way of operating. This is their third modus operandi. Now, in short, all these three themes are prevalent in all the articles that perpetuates an agenda. And mind you, not all the articles will perpetuate the agenda for Al Jazeera. No, it will be few articles, and those who do, these three elements will be common in all the articles that are perpetuating a hidden agenda. Now, a local residing in a relevant country might be able to distinguish facts from agenda. He might just ignore this article as complete piece of crap, but people sitting afar have no way of doing it. And if this continues, we should expect to see more events like Syria. Now that we have seen the modus operandi of Al Jazeera and that we know that it is financed by the government of Qatar, is it critical of the government of Qatar or is it super hypocritical when it comes to reporting on Qatar? Let's find out. Again, as I told you, the channel is funded by the government of Qatar. However, the channel leaves no stone unturned to assert its independence in reporting. It leaves no stone unturned to assert that its reporting is independent and it is not politically influenced and it is complete piece of shit. It's a plain lie. Reality becomes more evident when we analyze the reporting of Al Jazeera on its financier, that is the state of Qatar. The channel has found it convenient in ignoring the instances of violation of human rights and the lack of freedom of religion in Qatar. And even if it has reported on them with a tone that is defensive of the government and speaks of denial. I'll give you one example of it. This is the article of Al Jazeera on human rights violation of migrant workers, especially during the preparation for FIFA World Cup. Now, what was Al Jazeera's coverage? Let's take a look at this paragraph. Representatives of the Nepali and Qatari government criticized the article at a press conference held earlier this week. Ali Al-Mari, the chairman of Qatar's National Human Rights Committee, said there is no slavery or forced labor in Qatar and that the information that Guardian reported is false and the numbers cited by them are exaggerated. Right? That's it. Complete denial of facts and a defense of their financier. I wonder why a language like that was used for the case of India or Israel or USA is not being used here. Now, as you can see, it is a complete denial and refutation of facts, right? In these kind of articles, it is quite openly acting like the mouthpiece of the government of Qatar. It is in coverages like these that the true color of this media outlet is visible, that it is just a mouthpiece of the government of Qatar. Right, so this is the hypocrisy of this channel called Al Jazeera. Now let's conclude this video looking at this channel's role in the Arab Spring and in perpetrating misinformation and the power it has on instigating the local population as well as to instigate the West to act on the atrocities of the local authoritarian dictatorial regimes. I'm not shying away to say that this is a potent weapon in the hands of the government of Qatar. A weapon that is actually more powerful than a nuclear weapon. Without hitting the fire button, they were able to topple long-standing dictatorships. And without being questioned, they are being able to perpetrate misinformation, hatred, and hidden agendas with ease. It is this power that unsettled the Arab world in 2017 when all the Arab nations demanded the dismantling of Al Jazeera. They knew its power and they knew that it was being put to sinister use by the government of Qatar. However, due to a lot of support from other parts of the world, Qatar was finally able to save Al Jazeera. What would be interesting to see is how long the world will tolerate this, or how long the world will continue to allow these state organizations to perpetrate instability, misinformation, and hatred. That is all from this video. I'll see you again in the next video. Till then, bye-bye, take care, and have a great day ahead.